Folks, today's video is going to be a little outside the box for Stoney Ridge Farmer. We're leaving the farm, the Stoney Ridge Farm here in North Carolina. We flew to Denver, Colorado, and we went to meet Grandin. Grandin is autistic. She's also a world-renowned designer of cattle handling facilities, and she's also known worldwide as a proponent for advocacy for autism. So I guarantee you, stick around to the end of the video. You're gonna learn something. There's a lot of great information here. And she also has a movie out on HBO and several great books. The book that we mention a whole lot in this video, I'll post links to down in the video description for you. Hope you guys enjoy. Hey there folks, this is Josh, Stoney Ridge Farmer. Welcome back to the farm. It's another beautiful day here in sunny Colorado, Fort Collins, Colorado. And we are with someone who is very special in my mind. This is Dr. Grandin. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been in this field for a long time, designing livestock handling facilities, working on improving animal welfare of cattle all over the U.S. and in other countries. Working on all kinds of places, little places, big places, all kinds of places. Yeah,
that's awesome. So when I pulled you up on the internet, and I'll tell you how I heard about you. So I was at Joel Salatin's farm there, Polyface Farm,
yep,
up in Swope, Virginia. And he was talking about you, and he was talking about cattle handling, and he was talking about some of the principles that you see in your background. Are you autistic, or is it an Asperger's
well,
autism?
The thing is, basically they kind of keep changing the diagnostic stuff, but basically the Asperger's is, you know, socially awkward with no speech delay. I had severe speech delay, so I guess that makes me autistic.
Okay.
But one of the things is I'm an extreme visual thinker.
Gotcha.
So some of the very first work I did with livestock, I started looking at what's your animal seeing. Going through the chute, there's a chain hanging down, there's a piece of plastic someplace, a truck parked next to the facility, and these things would make the animals balk. And nobody else was noticing this. Now at the time, back in my 20s, I didn't know that other people did not think in pictures.
Right, right.
And I thought, why don't they see it? Well,
because they don't think
I
that
can
way,
give them checklists. In my book, there's checklists for you know, finding these things.
Right. Right.
That's some of the first work I did, and then other principles are things like point of balance. A real easy way to get cattle to move forward in a single file chute is to simply walk back by them in the opposite direction. If the cattle are going in this direction, you just walk by their shoulder in that direction. And when you cross the shoulder line, they will go forward.
And it's funny, it seems totally counterintuitive to what we would think, like pushing, and that causes the stress of the animal by pushing them in that direction, is by walking with them and pushing them in that way.
Well, when you walk past them kind of briskly, when you cross the shoulder line, they will go forward.
Gotcha.
Now, if you get absolutely tame cattle, those are the kinds you have to use the feed bucket.
Yeah.
I've been able to get sheep lining up waiting in line for the privilege of getting on a tilt table to get a teaspoon of horse feed.
That's awesome. Well, look, what I want to do, and this is, guys, this is a totally different type of video than we really do on the farm. And what this is leading into is the fact that we're getting ready to start putting up cattle handling facilities here on our farm. And we want to be the most educated that we possibly can, so we've reached out to the guru, really, on how to handle livestock, be it cattle, be it sheep, be it pigs. So that's why we're here. That's you know, typically Stoney Ridge farmers out there mowing and doing his thing. So
well, the problem we got with COVID,
yeah,
I can't take you out to the school's farm.
Yeah,
we got such strict COVID regulations right now. I can't even take you on campus.
We do.
So we're at the gazebo. Yeah. Where we're outside and we're social distancing with 2 cameras.
Absolutely.
Because we just don't have any other choice.
Absolutely. Well, hey, it's fine with me.
Yeah.
I'm very, very flattered to be here with you, Temple. And I've got a little list of questions down here in case you guys are seeing me look down, because I can't remember everything off the top of my head. So you're the subject of an HBO movie, self-titled HBO movie,
yeah.
Grandin.
Yes, that came out about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And one of the things I really liked in that movie is they showed cattle handling accurately. They also showed how I think visually, really accurately. Because a lot of people that are more verbal thinkers, they don't understand visual thinking. The other thing, when working with animals, You got to get away from verbal language.
Yeah.
Animals live in a sensory-based world. What is it seeing? What is it hearing?
Right.
What is it smelling? It's sensory-based. It's not word-based.
Right. So the yip, yip, hollering and whistling and all that carrying on is not the way to handle the animals. So a lot of your work that I've read and a lot of the movie talks about and really visually shows how cattle handling used to be. And I think you've been an innovator in the cattle handling industry in understanding that you are a proponent for animal rights, but you still understand that these animals serve a purpose and they're feeding our country. So,
We've got to give animals a life worth living.
absolutely.
Got to handle them right. And when I first started back in the 70s, animal handling was really rough. It's improved a lot. And there's other people out there now teaching low-stress handling methods.
Right.
But the first thing you got to do is to calm down when you handle animals. Because if you scream and yell at them, it takes 20 minutes to 30 minutes for them to calm back down.
Right.
So let's say you brought them in and they did get a little excited. You might want to take a break for 20 minutes and let those animals calm down.
Right.
You've got to calm down. And then when the person calms down, then there's all kinds of things that they can learn about animal handling
Gotcha.
when the cattle are calm.
So we talk. I love talking to my cows. I go out and talk to my cows, and I sit with them. And through the readings that I've had with you,
Yep.
I've learned different ways of approaching our animals.
Okay.
You know, not to rub a cow on the head, on the forehead.
Well,
you
the
know.
problem with rubbing cattle here, see, bulls fight by doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Horse you can rub here, because horses fight by doing this.
Right.
But if you press on this, it tends to make them want to press back. I call that sort of the no-fly zone of the military base.
Yep.
Because they have that hardwired behavior to push back. And so what you want to do is you scratch them everywhere else, stroke them down here, get them to put their head up. In fact, there is a picture in this book showing stroking an animal just to get it to put its head up. That's just fine. I don't know if I can find the picture right now. I'm looking for it.
It's somewhere close to the front.
Yeah, I know it's somewhere close to the front. But the problem is if you push on that forehead, it makes them butt
makes 'em
back.
butt, yeah.
And you must not play butting games with calves.
Right.
It's not cute when they grow up.
So we have a cow we call Butthead. And before I read your books, your initial, you want to go up and you want to rub them on the head like a dog. But it's not the thing to do.
Now you can rub them behind the ears.
Yeah.
You can rub them on the withers. Both horses and cattle really like being rubbed on the withers. That's just fine. Butt is fine.
Yep.
But that's a major species difference between horse and cattle. Horse you can scratch here.
Right.
Cattle you don't.
And there's also some science behind the hair on the head of the cow.
Well, that's right. Cattle have little hair whorls, and years ago I had a farrier come to me named Mark Deasing, and he had observed that sometimes horses that had a high hair whorl were more likely to give them trouble during shoeing.
Uh-huh.
And so years ago we did a study where we looked at cattle temperament. In fact, my student, Bridget Wazanay, did some of the first work in cattle temperament. This is back in the early 90s, and people thought we were crazy. And what we found is that animals that get all scared and excited in the squeeze chute had lower weight gains.
Gotcha.
Well, then I thought, well, let's see if the hair whorl position has some of the same effect. And so I had one person look at the hair whorl, another person ranked the temperament, and the ones that had a higher hair whorl think high is hot.
Okay.
That's an animal that startles more easily. Okay, what is the difference between temperament? What does he mean by temperament? Where you'll see the genetic differences in temperament is when you suddenly push novelty in its face.
Uh-huh.
People will say to me, oh, my horse was fine at home, it went berserk at the show.
Right.
They'll say the same thing with the steer, but you got a lot of new stuff there.
Yeah.
Flags, bikes, and balloons.
Yeah.
Now the thing about new stuff is new things are attractive if you let your animal voluntarily approach.
Right.
So if you want to train them to flags, put a flag out in the middle of the pasture.
Mm-hmm.
They'll come up to it. Don't shove it in their face. But when novelty suddenly appears, the animal with the flighty temperament gets scared more easily and will have a bigger reaction.
Gotcha. The part of in Joel Salatin's book, it's either in The Marvelous Pigness of the Pig or one of his books, he explains, go out and sit in a pasture and watch the cows come to you.
They'll
and
come to
be
you.
curious. They'll come right to you. They won't harm you. They don't see you as something threatening, but sudden movements, loud noises, like hissing, high-pitched noises?
Sudden intermittent noises. Now, I'd recommend if you're going to go sit out with the cows to do it in a large pasture.
Gotcha.
Or a very, very large pen. So if they got scared, they've got plenty of room to move away. Probably better to not do it with bulls.
Gotcha.
And let's talk a little bit about bull safety. The most dangerous bull for attacking a person is a hand-reared pet that's reared alone, totally away from other cattle. And he doesn't learn that he is cattle.
Right.
So when he becomes sexually mature, 18 to 24 months, he's got to prove he's the man.
Yeah.
So instead of going out and fighting another bull, and there's no other bull there to fight, he'll attack a person,
Yeah.
usually a man.
And there also some science to a cow or a bull that's used to people, but putting that animal alone in a pen, the danger behind
Yeah,
having
more-
5 cows in a pen versus 1.
Well, there's two things with a lone animal. You can just be working cattle. Let's say you have 20 cattle, and one is left, and going berserk because he's alone.
Right.
That is separation distress. But then you can have, bulls kept alone can be a problem. It's very important for young bulls to learn that they're cattle. To grow up in a social group, and then that will help reduce a lot of problems with bull attacks. It's the way they're raised.
Gotcha.
And they need to grow up with other cattle and learn that they're bovines. This also applies to stallions, buck goats, ram sheep, and buck deer. It's the same thing. The steer you can raise in the backyard's fine,
Yeah.
because he's a steer.
Yeah.
Or the heifer, that's going to be fine.
But they've got that testosterone.
That's
yeah.
the problem. The other problem with bulls is you all know that if they're doing this, that's aggressive. What they don't realize is a bull will turn sideways, hunch up his neck like that to show you, flex his neck muscles to show you how big and bad he is.
Yeah.
That's called a broadside threat.
Gotcha.
Well, if a bull demonstrates that towards people, that's not a bull you want to keep.
Right. Now, I also visited Greg Judy a couple months ago, and he spoke of you, and he spoke of cattle handling, and he's a man that really handles his cows all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
twice a day he's out there moving his cows.
For pasture, yeah.
Right, pasturing cows like that. He's got to work them through a loading area also, just like I'll have to do that too. Does it behoove the small farmer or even the large farmer to bring their animals through a working area like a sweep chute or
I mean, just
a sweep
to practice
system?
going through it.
Right.
Acclimating them to it's good, but it is possible to overdo it.
Gotcha.
And I've seen people do that. Reward them.
Yep.
Give them a little feed, treat, reward, and then they'll line up to go through the handling facility. Even line up to go on the squeeze chute,
Yeah.
just to get a little tiny handful of grain. It doesn't have to be very, very big treat.
Right.
But if you just keep them going round and round and round, then they get what I call chute sour, and they're not going to want to go through the facility. Now, when you're switching pastures, they know they're going to new grass.
Yep.
It's really important going through a gate to have an orderly movement.
Okay.
You don't want a mama cows rushing off through the gate, ditching the calves, leaving the calves behind.
Right.
Orderly movement. And cattle can get in some really bad manners, pushing and shoving on gates. Well, what you want to do is wait until they stay still for just a second, then open the gate.
Gotcha.
You want to reward polite behavior.
Right.
You don't want to accidentally reward pushy behavior around
Right.
gates, because that can get dangerous. They need to have polite behavior.
So.
But I want an orderly movement, because when you got newborn babies and moms rush off to new pasture, newborn babies get stressed.
Right. And a lot of what's detailed now. This book. Let's talk about your book here.
okay.
And I know a lot of folks that watch the YouTube channel here are working with small farms and small homesteads, and this is new information to you. But I really recommend this book. It's Temple Grandin's Guide to Working with Farm Animals, and this is basically dedicated to the person that has a small flock, like 10 to
That's
50,
right.
10 to 35. The book, I think, even
Yeah.
says 10 to 35 animals.
Well, sheep would be a few more.
Sheep would be a
Cattle
few
are
more.
only 10 to 35.
Gotcha. So a wonderful read, guys. I will post a link down the video description, and I hope I can get Miss Grandin to autograph this
Oh,
thing
I
and
will.
put it on,
I'd be happy to
put
do
it on
that.
my wall. But an awesome book, a really great book, and something that you can read over and over and over again, because that repetition is the mother
It's
of the
also
memory.
got lots of nice color photos.
Absolutely.
You can show lots of good photos of things. Here's photos right here. showing the flight zone. Right here you've got, they turn and face you.
Yep.
Then you enter the flight zone, they turn away, and then you've got a tan animal in the distance. He didn't get up, but he's looking at me.
Right.
And then you've got some where you're so far away, you have no effect on their behavior.
Right. In your movie, there were some really cool parts of the movie. And one of my favorite parts of the movie was when you were out there and you're looking at the animals, and you were in, I believe it was a horse in the movie, and the ears of the horse.
Yes, that's right.
And
I call that ear radar, because they can move the ears independently, and you can have a situation where maybe one ear might be on one person, another ear on another person, you know, sort of like this.
yeah,
They point their ears towards things that attract their attention.
right.
Now, if they pin their ears back, then they're either scared or they're aggressive. But you've got ears going around like a radar. There's something out there that they're trying to figure out what it is. You can watch that.
Right. And I love watching my cows. I love going down and spending time with my cows. And something else I learned from your book is that when cows are assessing something, assessing the ground, their eyeballs are different than a human eyeball. They don't have the round pupil. They have an oblong pupil. Is
Well,
that
they
right?
also, the grazing animals don't have a round fovea. They have a stripped fovea, because a horse eye and the cattle eye is designed so that when they're grazing, they can scan the horizon.
Gotcha.
So when the head is down grazing, now what's the first thing they do if they see something? Heads come up.
Right.
That's the first thing that they do. His heads are up, got a high head. But a grazing animal's got to scan for possible danger.
Gotcha. And
Also, let's talk a little bit about, you know, are they colorblind? Only partially. Cattle and horses do not see red.
Gotcha.
They're a dichromat. They have yellow and blue receptors. So that gives them better night vision and higher contrast vision. And when I first started out, they thought that these animals saw in black and white. Now, I know that's wrong now, but I would take my black and white camera, and if I took a picture of the shadows just around this gazebo, they're sharper in black and white.
Right.
You notice them more than you do in a colored picture.
Right. And humans, to be clear, have the red, green, and blue.
Yeah,
Is
we
that
have all the birds, the primates, and us, we got full color vision. But there's always a trade-off. We give up some night vision for that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
There's always a trade-off.
Can't see worth a hoot at night.
Yeah.
I've got a few questions here. How old were you when you were first exposed to livestock? And in the movie, it's depicted that you were close to college age before
Well, actually,
you...
I was younger than that. I was in high school.
Okay.
I was a teenager in high school when the movie kind of compressed some things.
Right.
But I was 14 and 15 when I first got exposed to dairy cattle, small little dairy farm that our school had, and then the beef cattle out on my aunt's ranch. That brings up a really important thing. Students get interested in stuff they get exposed to. And they get exposed to something and they go, oh, I love this or I hate this.
Right.
And one of the things we need to be doing is getting more people interested in farming.
Yeah.
Because with COVID, we had some big disruptions in the supply chain, and there's a big need for more local, medium-sized slaughter facilities. I was talking to a good friend of mine, and she couldn't get any flour except from the little local flour mill.
Right,
They
yeah.
still had it. It was more expensive, but they still had it. You kind of have two choices in supply chain. You can have big, concentrated, very efficient when it works, really, really economical, but easy to break.
Yeah.
It breaks real easily. You have a more distributed supply chain. It's going to be more expensive, but it's a lot more robust to disruption.
Right.
There's always that trade-off, and it's for many, many products. Big is fragile,
Yeah.
and COVID's shown just how fragile big is. I first came to the conclusion that big was fragile, a few years ago. We had a very bad flood here, and I was coming home from the airport, and I had to go all the way over to Greeley to get around the flood. I went over a bridge that was sticking out of the water by this much.
Wow.
And I got to thinking, big isn't bad, it's fragile. That's the thing, there's a difference. And COVID has definitely shown that. Other industries too, like pharmaceuticals. We have a very, very tight supply chain for things like antibiotics.
Yeah.
Just a few plants in other countries making those kind of vital medications.
Yep. And when one gets disrupted, the whole world gets
Well,
disrupted.
we had a problem when there was hurricanes in Puerto Rico getting IV bags.
Yeah.
And I have a friend who was an anesthesiologist, and she was supposed to ration IV bags. She says, I'm not going to do that. My patients are going to get headaches.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
because those are too expensive to ship.
Right.
And that's another fragile supply chain. A single plant got waterlogged, and
That's it. Yeah. So a few questions I had. Did you notice right off, like, do you feel like that you see something different in animals and livestock than most people? I know you say you see in pictures. When you were first exposed to the farm, did you see something different that you think most people don't have the
Well, of
don't
course
see?
you got to realize, when I first saw a farm, I thought everybody thought in pictures.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I thought differently. And then when I went out to Arizona and started working with the feed yards, I noticed, well, there's a shadow right there. They're stopping. There's a bright spot on the concrete from a sunbeam. They're stopping. And then I found that if I removed some of these distractions,
Yeah.
they would go through. And other people thought that was really odd that I'd get down inside the chute to see what cattle were seeing.
Right.
But it was obvious to me as a visual thinker. But at that time, I didn't know that other people were not a visual thinker.
Right. And the squeeze chute, they stressed the squeeze
Yep,
chute a
well-
lot in the movie. In college, you built basically a wooden
Yeah,
type
I did.
squeeze
I
chute
did.
for yourself.
And they showed that. They showed the movie. This is one thing exaggerated. It didn't
Yeah.
get thrown away. It got put in storage.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
I noticed that when you put the cattle in the squeeze chute, the pressure calmed them. Deep pressure can be calming, and that's true for a lot of people.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And growing up, in the movie was depicted. I guess now your mother really
Well,
worked
mother
hard.
just, I was brought up in the 50s. Kids were taught table manners, taught to shake hands, taught to say please and thank you. Social skills were just taught in a much more structured way in the 50s.
Right.
Mother always encouraged my ability in art and drawing, and she also taught me to read with phonics, because when I was in third grade I couldn't read.
Right.
The old Dick and Jane books, that just didn't work. And she had a very good sense of how to stretch me, just to keep developing. I can't emphasize enough, take the thing the kid's good at and develop it. It could be art, and some of the kids that are good at art are also going to be super good with farm equipment, with anything mechanical.
Right.
They will be super, super good with that. And we've got a gigantic shortage right now of skilled trades. We don't have people to fix power lines out in California. All those power lines falling down because they simply didn't maintain the brackets that hold the wires up.
Right.
So I gave a talk last fall where when the wind gets up to 40 miles an hour at this place out in California, they turn the power off so the wires won't fall down
Yeah.
because they never maintained them.
Right. Well, it is a shame that in our school systems that we aren't teaching these hands-on type activities.
I think it's the worst thing they've ever done. I was just looking at an article today that some doctors can't sew up cuts because they never use scissors as children.
Right. Yeah.
They're not doing anything with their hands, and that a surgeon that would be the best surgeon is one that did a lot of hand activities, like crocheting, playing the piano,
And those are the best.
doing things with their hands.
Absolutely. So I don't know, Temple, if you know that I'm a registered nurse,
Yes,
and
okay.
I was very intrigued by the autism and portion of what you've done with your life. And we're here really to talk about cattle and cattle handling,
Yes.
and gentle cattle handling and gentle handling of farm animals. But you've been such an inspiration to so many people in the world of autism. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Well, autism varies from Silicon Valley computer scientist to maybe quirky guy who can fix any piece of farm equipment
Yeah.
to somebody who can't dress themselves.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, I looked really severe. I got into very good early educational treatment to get speech therapy.
Right.
That was really important, but it's a very, very big spectrum. And when I was out in the field working on construction projects, because I would sell a job, design the facilities, then supervise construction, I worked with drafting people, machinery designers, welders. A lot of them, I'd guess maybe 20% of them would be special ed kids today.
Yeah.
And they were saved by that welding class.
Right.
And today they own a great big huge metal fabrication company.
Right.
And what's happening now is these kids are ending up in the basement playing video games instead of making things.
And being socialized a little bit
Yeah.
with folks.
Well, and I know people I've worked with that are not very social, but they're very good at making stuff.
Right, absolutely. So when we talk about cows and we talk about handling facilities, and what I've chosen to buy is a sweep system,
Okay.
a sheeted sweep system, which means that the cows can't really see their surroundings so much. Tell me what your thoughts are on a facility that is square versus
Okay, you get
around.
into discussion about the bud boxes versus tubs.
Right.
Well, they both can work. The tubs, when they're laid out right, it's easier to train someone on. It's more expensive, but less skill dependent. Bud box, super simple. You can make it out of portable panels, but it requires more skill to use it safely.
Gotcha.
And they both can be made to work. I've got, in my book, I've got both kinds of designs in here, and I have them in here so you can make them out. Here's an example right here of two kinds, a tub design and a bud box design. And all of these designs, since they are for smaller farms, are designed so you can set them up out of portable panels.
Gotcha.
And that's something that's very useful if you're on rented property. You don't want to, if you cement your posts into the ground, the landlord owns it.
Yep. You don't want to dump
No.
that infrastructure into something that's not going to be yours.
Absolutely.
Right,
So
so-
all these designs can be made with portable panels. I do have another book for big ranches, and those would be welded in place facilities. That book's titled Humane Livestock Handling.
Gotcha. So some of what we have on our farm is going to be some welded in place, and some structures are going to be portable structures and cattle panels. I think I just bought 50 cattle panels so we can move our
I
cows.
can't emphasize enough, both types of designs have got to be laid out properly.
Gotcha.
I go out and I see tub designs that are awful. I've seen bud boxes laid out totally wrong. They're rectangular, they're not square. One of the big mistakes that people make is right where your single file joins the crowd pen, regardless of what type of crowd pen it is. And if you bend that too sharply, when the cattle face the entrance, they don't see any place to go.
Right.
That will not work.
Gotcha.
I call that dead ending the shoot or dead ending the race. That's one of the worst mistakes that you can make.
Gotcha.
And you have stuff laid out wrong, then you're going to say, well, I hate tubs or I hate bud boxes. When I go out there and look at it, it's laid out wrong.
Right.
That's a third thing.
Right.
And there's lots of facilities that are laid out wrong.
Are there? Now you've helped design some of the largest facilities
Yes, I
here
have.
in the country
Yes.
for cattle handling. And tell me about, now cows like to move in circles.
Well, cattle have a natural behavior to go back to where they come from.
Gotcha.
So when you're using a tub, the ones that I have laid out, you're coming around the bend, going back to where they come from.
Gotcha.
And one of the best ways to work a tub is to work at the pivot. You stand at the pivot and just have them come around you. You do the same principle in the bud box. They go in, you're standing inside the box, they come on around you. You're using that behavior to go back to where you come from.
Gotcha.
Now, if you have completely tame cattle,
Yeah.
then you just have to lead them.
They'll just do whatever. Yeah.
Well, and they also have to teach them that they can't just walk over the top of you.
Right. So it's tough when you've got a farm and you have, like our farm right now, we have 9 cows. We plan on being somewhere in the 35 to 40 to 50 range. And those cows can be tamed. But when you get into a place like Greg Judy's that has 300 head and he's moving 300 head twice a day, then you have some of the tactics that you have to deploy for handling that amount of cattle.
Well, that amount
are
of
different.
cattle, if you're doing moving pastures, they're going to want to move.
Gotcha.
So the thing you've got to make sure is you have a controlled movement, that they're
Gotcha.
not just racing into the next pasture. And then I have some designs in my other book, Humane Livestock Handling, for the larger ranches for 300 head of cattle.
Gotcha. Well, what we're going to do, guys, just so you know, is we're going to have links to all of Temple's books, and we're also going to have a link down there for Temple's movie in case you guys want to learn a little bit more about this, because that's what we do here. What the YouTube channel is all about is about educating folks, entertaining, having fun, working on equipment. I find myself to be a more visual thinker, much like yourself, and hands-on thinker.
Well, I'm really interested in how people think, and I'm worried that our visual thinkers are getting screened out because we can't do algebra.
Right?
I absolutely couldn't do algebra. And I'm seeing kids where they're pounding away on algebra, they can't graduate from high school, they won't even let them take auto shop
Right.
because they can't do algebra. And we need our visual thinkers.
We do.
We're short on people to fix things. There's a lot of specialized equipment that we don't make anymore. Like, for example, all the conveyors in a warehouse that move the stuff around that we buy online.
Right, right.
A lot of that equipment's coming from Germany. And the reason for that is because of a lack of skilled trades.
Right. Here in America.
That's the reason.
It's pretty amazing that a lot of folks just don't know how to put their hands on something, and make something. Like you said, artistic abilities and mechanical abilities almost come hand in hand.
Well, they are. And when the clever guy who can make any machine work, that tends to be the visual thinker.
Gotcha.
And then you have your mathematical thinkers, they're your programmers, but they're not the visual people.
Right. My friend Drake and I were talking about what it was like for us to learn in school, and when you throw a country boy in a trigonometry class, they just whoa, just can't put it together. But if you draw it out like a geometry class,
Yeah.
like I excelled at geometry. I couldn't, I'm like you. Algebra didn't make any sense to me because
Well, you
there's
see, there's nothing to visualize.
Right.
It's too abstract. That's the problem. Then another problem is I can't remember any of this stuff, because for me to remember things, I need to make a graphics file. And then if I can make a graphics file, then I can remember it.
You have to see it. You
Yeah.
have to see it in your head. If you don't see
But
it
we
in
need
front of
the
you.
different kinds of minds, because what I've noticed now in things like great big meat factories is that we're importing a lot of the specialized equipment. Now you're more mathematically trained engineer, you'll do the roof structure, the boilers, the refrigeration, those kinds of things.
Right.
But I'm concerned about losing skills in what I call the clever engineering department.
Right.
Very clever equipment. We're not making elevators anymore.
No.
That's another example.
I think there's more value now put on the mind that doesn't think in pictures like you're talking about. There's more value. It seems as though our education system puts more value on someone who can work out a math problem versus someone who can put something together really
But you
quickly.
need to have both.
Right.
You need both.
Temple, I could talk to you all day, every day for a month. It's super awesome to hear
Well,
somebody.
let's talk a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about animal
Okay.
emotions.
Okay, and that's what I was going to ask you.
I find it, some people think, well, a dog doesn't have emotions. I think that's ridiculous. Because if you look at the brain science, the motion centers in people and animals, the lower brain centers are the same. And I really like the Jack Panksepp emotional systems.
Okay.
You've got fear,
Yep.
motivates you to stay away from predators.
Yeah.
You've got anger. Then you have separation distress. And separation distress is different than fear. That's when you got that lone animal by itself all upset. You take the calf away from the mom. Then you got seek. Some animals really want to get out and explore, and
Goats.
others don't. Goats are higher seekers. Then you've got sex. Then you've got the mother-young nurturing, the oxytocin system, and then you have play. Now there's some serious discussions going on in neuroscience journals right now about whether or not animals are conscious. I think this is ridiculous. And I think it's basically getting down to verbal thinkers that think completely verbally,
Right.
have a difficult time imagining how a dog would experience the world.
Right.
I think it basically gets down to that. Because when I read the papers, then I click on the little thing so I can get the author's affiliations, so I can find out, was he a neuroscientist or is he a psychologist? Psychologists are more language-based.
Right.
The language-based people have a hard time thinking that animals are truly conscious the way we are. Where a visual thinker, it's totally obvious that dogs have got emotions.
Absolutely. If you spend any amount of time
Well,
with any
that-
livestock, you know.
Well, yes, but just in the last 3 years, discussions on this are still going on in serious scientific journals. And one person finally in one of those discussions says it gets down basically between verbal thought and non-verbal or visual thinking thought.
Right. So, and that you lead me into the perfect question. So, how does calm and gentle livestock handling, how does that play into the quality of the animal, the quality of the meat, the cortisol levels that, stress causes cortisol to raise in the animal? And
You get cattle all excited when you handle them, you'll triple their cortisol levels.
Right.
That's absolutely documented. Another question that often comes up is, are they afraid of getting slaughtered?
Yeah.
I've reviewed the literature on cortisol levels during handling. They are basically the same in a squeeze chute on the farm and at a slaughterhouse.
Right.
And they range from high to low, but they are the same ranges.
Right.
It's really important in the last 5 minutes for both pigs and cattle to have calm handling. Because you poke electric prodders on cattle, 5 minutes before slaughter you can get tougher meat, and the
Right.
pigs are going to get pale soft meat. And that last 5 minutes is really important to handle them calmly.
Right.
And then you need things like non-slip flooring.
Gotcha.
You've got to have a non-slip floor for animals.
What Joel Salatin was telling me is and the same thing with his chickens. So we raise chickens on our farm too, in a similar way to what they do on Polyface Farm. These animals have a wonderful life with one bad moment, and that's what we're seeking in all of our food and all of our livestock here in the country. And I think that's what you're a huge proponent of.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
we've got to give them a life worth living.
Absolutely.
That is really super important. Another area I'm getting concerned about is when you genetically select animals, any animal, cattle, pigs, chickens, just for growth, you can get into problems, leg problems. Cattle or pigs with leg conformation issues, their legs are too straight, they're collapsed in the ankles. That can cause lameness. If you overselect for any single trait, you will wreck your animal. I don't
Right.
care what that animal is. And you push biology too hard, you're going to have problems. Looking at genetic selection, I like to visualize an animal as a country, and I've got a national budget. If I take my whole genetic selection and put it into the economy, something like rapid growth, then I'm going to shortchange my infrastructure. That's going to be bone
Yeah.
and skeletal structure. I also shortchange repro.
Right.
Look at high-producing dairy cow, bad repro, and I shortchange my military,
Right.
which is the ability to fight off disease. Everything takes energy. What we have to look at is what's the optimal thing to do.
Right.
I'm also a big proponent of measuring handling, measuring things like lameness, because these welfare issues can creep up on you and you don't realize it.
Right.
I call that bad becoming normal. You get so used to looking at lame dairy cows that you simply don't see them.
Right.
But then you start to go in and measure the lameness. You go, 24% of my cows were lame.
Right. And you didn't even notice.
You didn't even notice. In fact, there's been 3 scientific studies that have shown that dairy managers will underestimate lameness by half unless they have actually measured it.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, the Temple, is there any guidance that you might have for all these folks?
In this book right here, also it's got the scoring systems are in here too.
I saw
Yeah.
that, and the cortisol level chart there
Yeah,
too.
that's right.
So, is there any advice that you might give to someone who's homesteading and thinking of starting a new farm, as for handling their livestock and planning out their farm? Is there any bit of advice besides?
Well, I would recommend getting very good local advice on soils and pastures. That's very much site specific. Talking to other farmers, I'd recommend somebody new join the local farmers group.
Right.
Talk
right.
to the county extension agents, talk to professors at the local universities, get lots of information.
Yep.
Because like on pasture rotation, I'm a big fan of like doing cover crops and all kinds of interspersing animals and crops. But it's very local.
Gotcha.
It's real local. I can't emphasize that enough. And I got interested in animals, what they can do for the land if you use them right. Because, beef gets, or goats get criticized for like wrecking the environment. But if you use a grazing animal right, they can improve the soil.
Absolutely.
But you have to use them right.
Right.
Cannot emphasize that enough.
What we can see over our farm, so I have a drone that I fly over the farm, and what you can see is where we've appropriately grazed these animals, the land is healing. And
Yeah,
we live in
that's
an
right.
area, we live in the Piedmont area of North Carolina, which is the most highly eroded soil in the United States, in our country. And I would have thought the Grand Canyon or out in the desert Southwest would be, but where we live is the most highly eroded area in the country, and there are no topsoils. And much like Joel Salatin on Polyface, we're rebuilding our soils where there once were rocks. There's now soil.
Well, and animals are part of the land. I don't know, about 5 years ago, our animal science department had an agronomist come to speak, and I learned something I didn't know before. I learned that the bison herds of grazing animals created the best cropland in Iowa and Illinois.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, using those animals correctly on the land, we can improve the land. Monoculture, it's really good in the short run. In
Right.
the long run, it's a disaster.
And that's where our food system seems to be going, to a monoculture and specializing in that monoculture.
Well, and there's some people realizing that that's not such a good thing.
Right.
I went to a very interesting seminar 2 years ago up in North Dakota, and they were starting to do some good things.
That's awesome.
But I can't emphasize, it is very, very much site-specific. You've got to work with local people in the area.
Got to learn. Got to reach out to people in your local area. I get a lot of questions about soil and what we're doing on our farm. You have to take all of this information and pull it all together.
There's a lot of information, and first thing you want to learn is what not to do.
Yep. And don't be cocky about it.
And no, don't be.
Absolutely.
You always can keep learning. I mean, that was 5 years ago that I learned that bison created the best cropland. I didn't know that. This is a good example of going across disciplines, that we had an agronomist come in to talk to our animal science department.
Yeah.
And that was a seminar that I really learned a lot from that.
Took home a lot of information. So I know with COVID and everything that's going on right now, people are very limited in being able to come and see you speak. Is there a website that folks could go to?
Well, there's tons of stuff online if you just look
absolutely.
for it.
But for
I
you,
have I have a website, Grandin.com. That's
Okay.
just my livestock website, Grandin.com. It's my last name. My autism website's templegrandin.com.
okay,
It's easy to find videos. I have a basic video on cattle handling. It's got the title, the search for it, Temple Grandin General Cattle Handling.
okay,
I don't know how it got that title, but it did. But if you just search for video, Temple Grandin General Cattle Handling,
Yeah.
you can find that video, and it was filmed by a TV station, and it was done nicely.
all right. Temple Grandin General Cattle Handling.
No, General.
General
Like the military.
Okay.
I don't know why it got called that. No, it's Temple Grandin General. You got to use the right keyword or you won't find it.
Gotcha. Okay.
Temple Grandin General Cattle Handling Video.
Gotcha.
And use those keywords, you can find it.
Okay.
And I've got a video library on Grandin.com with links. You can look at that.
And just pool the information.
Yeah, I've got a lot of videos for cattle handling. Some of them are my videos. Some of them are other people's videos that I really liked.
Yep.
And you can access them there also.
I've seen several of them, and I'll tell you guys. In conclusion here, I really want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day for us. We flew here from North Carolina because
now with COVID, we can't do stuff like go out to dinner and stuff.
I know.
Because it's because of COVID.
Well,
so now you're going back to.
Maybe one day, maybe we'll be able to come back and revisit. And I tell you, it warms my heart to be able to spend some time with somebody that's as significant a figure in the world of agriculture and in the world of autism and autism care and people having
Well, the thing is,
understanding.
sometimes I see too many of these kids getting too babied, and they don't learn basic skills like shopping, and there's not being enough like the developed strengths, whether it be a visual thinker, that's going to be art, mechanical things, a math thinker, that's going to be computer programming.
Right.
And nobody thinks to move the kid ahead in math,
Right.
or to show them some programming stuff
Take the time, slow down, and pay attention
and
to
develop
to
the
things.
strengths. And they get too hung up that he has autism. I'll tell you, I've been to Silicon Valley, I've been to the major tech companies, half the programmers have autism.
Yeah, that's
Been
awesome.
there, seen them.
That's awesome. Well, Temple, I dig your style. I really do. I love the cowgirl style. I really appreciate you having me here. We'll air shake for our social
We're
distancing.
going to air shake. You want to
Yeah.
film the air shake?
Yep, there
That's
we
what
go.
we're going to do, an air shake.
So,
We can do it like this too.
yep, high five, air high five.
Air high fives. We can do that.
So guys, I'm going to post a ton of links in the bottom of this video so that you guys can educate yourselves. Again, if you're considering homesteading, if you're considering starting a small farm similar to what Greg Judy's doing, to what Polyface is doing, and you may name 1,000 other farms like this.
Well, and I do get questions on the templegrandin.com, even though it is the autism site. It does take animal questions.
Gotcha. Awesome. So, and people can reach you. It's not like you're an untouchable, unreachable
I
person.
can be reached, and people. I find lots of people don't think to look on the Colorado State University Animal Science website.
Yeah,
They don't think to look in the obvious places.
absolutely. Now you'll be. How long do you think you'll be teaching?
Well, I plan to keep teaching.
Till you can't teach anymore?
Well, I'd have to be in a wheelchair.
Well, that's all right. There's a whole-
But I think teaching's important, and I don't think teaching gets enough credit.
yeah.
Teaching's really important. I feel at my age right now, I want to encourage the young people coming into farming. Young people now want to start small farms. I want to encourage that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
But seek help in your local area.
Educate yourself.
Yep,
Continual
that's right.
education, and
The
every
other
day.
thing that's a big problem is we don't have enough small, decent USDA inspected slaughterhouses. That's another big problem area. There's a real need for that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for visiting with us, Temple, and hopefully we'll be able to revisit you in a year or two maybe, and get back out here and talk to you. If you're ever on the East Coast, you're welcome on our place. Well, hopefully we'll have our nice cabin back in the woods where you can get back there and just be alone in nature and enjoy a beautiful place
Okay,
like
well,
that.
thank
too.
you very, very much.
Yep. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate you watching. I know today's video is probably a little bit longer than we typically run, but when we're in the presence of someone with such a knowledge base, I think it's just really important for all of us to learn. So thank you all so much. And there's one thing that we do at the end of every video here on the Stoney
What do we
Ridge
do?
Farm channel. So we always give a little woo. So
All right.
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, guys. We're
All
going
right.
to see you all next time on the Stoney Ridge Farm channel.
Woo.
Pound the like button,
Okay.
subscribe to the channel, and thanks. All right? Woo!
Woo.
Good stuff.
Well, come on down to the Stoney Ridge. Bring your wife and bring your kids. We're living life pure and sweet. That's the way it's supposed to be, Stoney Ridge.